So behavioural systems mapping is the integration of two quite different ways of understanding and acting in the world. So one of those derives from system thinking, and the other one derives from behavioural science and its application to real-world problems. The system thinking component of it is causal loop diagramming, and this is the task of defining a system in terms of the entities and the relationships between them that create a bounded system of interest and emergent properties that we think are interesting about it. So this could be the health and well-being of a community. It could be how well an organisation pursues its mission. So the other half of behavioural system mapping, the behavioural science side of it, in the methodology that I'll be focusing on today at least, there are frameworks for trying to articulate what people do and why they do it, such as the behaviour change wheel. It's been developed by Robert West and Susan Mickey from the UK. And the method of behavioural systems mapping that's explicitly named that derives on that framework and essentially includes behaviours, influences on behaviour, actors and interventions in a systems map as the causal loop diagramming. So on one level, it's simply the integration of these two different approaches, but on the other, there are very different philosophies about how the world works, how you understand it and how you change it that are associated with system thinking. And one of the interesting things, I guess, about combining those two is how those come out in the wash when you work with them together. Previously in BehaviourWorks' approach to behaviour change campaigns, we would do things like stakeholder analysis and relationship mapping, which is part of what the method of behavioural system mapping does. But we would tend to stop that process at the question of who could change how in order to address the problem, and then move to more traditional behavioural science methods to try and do things like understand, well, why do they do those things and what specific behaviours could we change, why are they done and what might work to change them. Behavioural system mapping is kind of interesting because it combines several of those steps in one process, at least offers the prospect of having a much more integrated approach to combining those different steps in the BehaviourWorks method. And in particular, moving through this question of whose behaviour could change how, what behaviours are important, what influences them, and therefore where might be a fruitful place to design a behaviour change intervention. That all becomes part of the single process, which is what's exciting about this method. If the problem involves people, what influences them, and some of the outcomes of their behaviour, then you can apply it to that. So in the context of circular economy, for example, we have done a lot of work trying to understand different behaviour changes that users, people who are interacting with products and materials and generating things that could end up as waste, could do to increase the circularity of the movement of materials through those behaviours. And many of those behaviours are dependent on other people providing or doing things or not doing things, which often is not very well captured in a traditional behavioural science approach. And so the opportunity of applying it to a multi-leveled complex problem like circular economy is that you can get a better sense of these links between different behaviour changes, and in particular how actions by designers and manufacturers of products, for example, might enable or constrain whether or not someone gets a durable or a reusable product, whether or not a charity gets a good quality second-hand item, whether or not someone purchasing that second-hand item gets a good quality item, and so on. And so it highlights some of those interdependencies and the need for multi-level interventions that target other people. We're also applying the method in other areas. So we addressed elements of the methodology in the climate adaptation mission. We're also applying it in the context of water sector cybersecurity governance. That and the circular economy example, for example, show the very wide application of complex problems it can be applied to.